Hi, I'm Beth Paretta, and you're watching the Keynote Curators podcast with Seth Dechtman.
Beth Paretta, welcome to the Keynote Curators podcast. It is such an honor and a privilege to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be great.
It is going to be great. We were together at a client event and you, no surprise, hit it out of the park. And everybody was just so abuzz with your story and what you're up to right now. Share with us at this moment what it is that you're working on that's really exciting you.
I think the most exciting thing is we just announced our plans for this year, for 2022, in the IndyCar Series, and we're going to be back on track. And we announced a 3-race schedule with maybe another event to be added as schedules allow. But we're going to be racing beginning this June, and we also will have a race in July and one in August. And what is exciting about that specifically for us is showing the progress that we built on from last year. We were in the Indy 500 last year in 2021. It was an historic entry. It was historic to just make the field. Unique thing about the Indy 500 in particular is you have to qualify to make the race. Not everybody makes it.
Right.
The field is fixed at 33 cars, and last year there were 35 entries going for those 33 spots. So it was a bit of a nail biter down to the wire to see who was going to
Right.
make the show, and we were lucky enough to make it. But this year I was keen to, as we carried on from that momentum, to do more. And by putting together this 3+ race deal, what's great about that is it's going to get us to new tracks, new markets, new venues, so we get to see fans in new places, and it gets our team to new places as we try to grow to be a full-time team.
Yeah, that is exciting. You said it so, I don't know if it's casual, but you said it so matter of fact that it was historic.
Yeah.
And I just want our listeners to really understand the depth and the significance of the historic part of it. So just share a little bit about that.
That's a great question, and it's one that probably fills a lot of the comment sections on news articles and Facebook
Sure.
posts. Everybody, of course, thinks that they know how to do this, and there's so many moving parts behind the scenes that until you do this for a living, you may not really have a full appreciation of how all of these things actually come to be. There's a competition side of the business that I'm running and a commercial side of the business. And both of those are equally important. Certainly the commercial side of the business is, getting partners and sponsors that are helping to fund the effort and then making sure that we're delivering value to those partners and sponsors. And that's an ongoing thing that's, 12 months out of the year. And then on the competition side, the decisions that you make about making sure that you have the best resources, the best people, the best opportunity and getting the best equipment for the best opportunity, giving everybody the best chance of winning. Those are things that are equally important. So interestingly, the decisions that I have to make as a business owner are a little different than a typical business. Add to that what we're doing is also very public and people can have opinions about it, but it's also on television. So there's a different kind of pressure that people are watching. And so you want to make sure that you are hitting your marks and doing things well. And the best way to do that is I want to set up my entire team to win. Yes, we want to give Simona a very fast car so that she could win the race. But the way for me to do that is to make sure that my engineers have all of the elements that they need. Do they have the right software? Do they have the right equipment? Our mechanics have, were we able to find shoes that fit women? Because normally most of these people are average
Right.
size men and we had to downsize all these little things. So there's so many little touch points that you want to make sure that all of these elements of my business are kind of, pardon the pun, firing on all cylinders. So the decision about not being in the Indy 500 this year was very deliberate. In fairness, I did look at the Indy 500, but for 2022, my intention was that if we did do the Indy 500, I wanted to be sure that we did the Indy 500 and more races, because
Right.
my ambition is for us to grow as a full-time team. More races are helping just having us add skills and grow as a team, learning new places. One little thing, for instance, if you watch racing, Indy 500, the car comes in pit lane right to left. Well, some of these venues that we're going to be going to this year, they go left to right. So
Ah,
my pit crew has to learn everything opposite, and that's what a
right.
normal team does. So those are little things that you have to work on and you have to add, just to kind of show up and be a full-time entry. You used to be able to do that years ago. You can't anymore. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing about this business is gone are the days where you just buy all the stuff and show up and figure it out. It's too expensive and there's too much at
Right.
stake
You got to
because
lease stuff, right? You got to lease your
absolutely.
engines. Yeah.
Yep, everything's leased at the end of the yeah, the engines are leased, you don't buy them. But I'm working with a partner team, so the way that you get your legs under you is find a technical alliance, like I now have with Ed Carpenter Racing. Last year, I worked with Team Penske. Arrangement that I had last year was a 1-year deal, was a 1-year contract, and the people that I had working with me on my team are now working on a Porsche sports car program. So we always knew that that was where, that where the
Right.
end of that agreement was going to go because the people were being moved to something different. So with the technical alliance, if you want to be a new team in IndyCar now, you do have to pair up with an existing team, and for a few years you may rent or lease equipment from them until you get your legs under you, and then you can really, and I when I say afford to buy your own, I don't mean afford necessarily by the cost of the equipment, but where you are stable enough where the investment in everything is a sound decision.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
unique. So yeah. So this year we chose not to be in the Indy 500. And respectfully, the Indy 500 is the most magical race in the world. I know I sound biased, but hear me out. You never know who's going to win. There are only 33 cars and you can look back and there's never really a favorite. Yes, you have somebody that's a driver, a team that's looking strong in the month of May, but on race day, anything can happen. It's 500 miles, it's 200 laps, anything can happen. But that's why we love it because it's so unpredictable. And so when you're one of those 33 entries, it's like having a lottery ticket. And you're just hoping that your number comes up when the checkered flag falls. So that's the romanticism around it and the energy around it and why everyone wants to be in that race.
Right. It's such a strong appeal. And the sponsors, I can't help but think, I'm a competitor. I'm more of a stick and ball
Mhm.
traditional type of athlete, but the competition, but there's also the competition in business for sponsors. I mean,
Yeah.
Penske, Carpenter, you've aligned yourself with some, pretty elite
Yep.
group there. But there are some universal ideas I think that apply outside of the motorsport racing world, the appeal, the allure, the magic, the history, the romance of the Indy. But somebody who's entering a market, if you will, which
Right.
let's just take the case that last year you were,
Yeah.
um, it's a cautionary tale if you have all your eggs in one basket.
Mhm.
So while you're walking away from the romance and the magic, it seems to me like a longer term decision to say, okay, maybe the Aggies aren't as big, but they're spread out.
Right.
If there's a major breakdown here, that's not it. It's not a one and done race for the year. And like
Mhm.
you said, you're getting them different experience coming in from the left instead of the right and everything.
Right.
That's just really, really interesting. So, Beth, I want to move to race day. And given that the Indy 500 is the largest sporting event in the world, there is so much to manage, so much competition. The stakes are as high as can be.
Right.
And one of the most important features, other than having your car operating properly and the drivers on point, is the pit stop.
Right.
And you had a predominantly, if not all female pit crew that
Right.
needed to start from zero and be ready on the largest stage for the largest sporting event in the world.
Right.
Share with us that journey.
I think that is probably the most amazing takeaway of what we accomplished. And I actually have a still photo that is hanging in my living room because it's probably the thing that encapsulates our achievement and certainly what makes me the proudest. So yeah, the Indy 500 is the largest single day sporting event in the world. In normal years, there are 350,000 people there physically on site, and then of course it's broadcast all over the world. So it's one of those events that people watch even if you're not a racing fan. It's always on Memorial Day. It's a Sunday of Memorial Day. Most people are aware of it. They could even be at their family gatherings and it's often on a television in the corner, right? So it's something that everybody knows. It's like the fabric of certainly of the United States. But a IndyCar pit crew, there are 7 people that go over the wall, as we call it, when they're jumping over the wall when the car comes in to change tires, get fuel, have now a windshield tear off, which is new. And then the car goes back out again. And the general rule is we want that pit stop to be 6 seconds or less, about 6.2 seconds or less. And the reason why we say that is because that's how long it takes to fuel the car. So we know roughly this target that you want to have for any pit crew up and down pit lane, whether it's us or anyone else. So my intention was that we wanted to have some women go over the wall because there had been women over in history in IndyCar. There was maybe one woman here, one woman there on one team or another team. I don't know if there had been 2 in a single race, possibly, but if so, maybe one or two times. It is not a typical thing to have women on an IndyCar pit crew or a NASCAR pit crew. There have been a couple, but not in any sort of volume. And that was my goal. So we decided to find women who could do this. And there had to be a certain amount of athleticism, a certain amount of mechanical ability. And we leaned on some people that had worked with different diversity training programs in racing. And then we also just put a call out for people that were athletes that had the potential physical strength to do this, because it's not easy. So we started with 9 women. We whittled down to 6. And these women were working with Team Penske, who's my technical partner, when we launched. And these women have day jobs. This was something that they were being invited to do on the side because, of course, we were just going to be running in one race. So it wasn't a full-time job. Some of these women are moms. So we had to figure out among this group of 6 women, when would they be able to go in to go? We have a pit training school where they're going in and working out in the gym and then learning how to do this. So they decided that the best time that was going to work for them was 4:30 in the morning. And so they were there from 4:30 to 6, 4 days a week for, goodness, almost 3 months, going in every morning and then going on to their day job. So the way that you do it is literally it's indoors, and there is a wall that's the right height. It's the exact height of what the pit wall is that you're jumping over. And there we have an electric Indy car that rolls in because we're indoors, right? We can't have it be fueled up and running. But they first learn on a static car where the car is just there. It then gets jacked up. We have a pneumatic jack. Air jack goes in the back of the car. The whole car raises up on stilts, and they change the tires. They do all that, tasks that they're assigned. And then the car drops back down again, and it's timed and it's videotaped. And they do it over and over and over again. They learn how to, they then watch the videotape back. They learn from their mistakes. They learn how to move more efficiently because, of course, smooth is fast. Just like a racing driver, smooth is fast. Well, being a part of a pit crew, smooth is fast. So part of it is speed, efficiency, and accuracy, and not necessarily in that order a combination of all three. And to put it in perspective, their first pit stop on that static car, they did in 18 seconds. And remember, the goal is to be less than 6.2. So respectfully, Seth, if you and I did it and with a few other people, we probably would have been slower than 18 seconds. So although 18 sounds slow, that was actually still pretty impressive. So they do this static pit stop, and then they learn how to then do it over and over and over again until that time gets faster, faster, faster.
Right.
Then they introduce another variable. Now the car rolls in, and they have
Right.
to learn
And
about
that, if I may, you mentioned efficiency, smooth and everything, but overhanging everything is safety.
safety, their own safety, because
Right.
when that car is actually coming in on race day, it's 60 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour. And yes, we're working on our car in our pit box, but there are other cars in pit lane that are coming in at a high rate of speed. So you have to be aware of what you're doing, but you always have to have this peripheral awareness that something else could come barreling down pit lane, and which actually did happen in our race. But these women were practicing over and over again. And then I say, like with the rolling car, learning how to run around the car when the car stops and how to move the air gun. And I say all this because the next time you watch a race, and you can actually even pull our race up on demand on Peacock, you can watch this and you can, look at it slowly. And they do it over and over and over again. And also as a reminder, when, they're kneeling down when they're taking the wheel off, the wheel is about 35 pounds. The rear wheel weighs a little bit more than the front wheel. But as they're kneeling down, so they have the air gun, center nut, boom, remove the nut. They grab the wheel with one arm and then grab the new wheel with the other arm. So there's this ambidextrous strength that they have to have while they're kneeling. So center of gravity, none. And these are motions that you don't normally do. So these women were obviously discovering muscles they didn't know they had, and
Right.
working out every
Right.
day and very sore. And they started February 1st. We hired them February 1st, and they progressed so well. And I wasn't sure how many. So an IndyCar pit stop, there's 7 people that go over the wall, and there's some very critical roles behind the wall that are supporting the people that have jumped over. They're the ones who making sure they're retrieving the tire, retrieving the hose, all these things that also have to be done just as smoothly. So what they're doing shouldn't be minimized either. So people kept asking me, how many women will you have over the wall on race day? And I specifically didn't tell anybody because I wanted to protect. I should say the way that we did this is all of these women were training up, but I also had veteran men who could jump in at any time. So I had the 7 veteran men who've been doing this for 20, 25 years
Sure.
because again, what if one of my new crew members was injured, on Thursday in practice, and she's not going to be able to go over the wall? I had the luxury of having somebody that I could substitute in. But the reason I didn't tell people what was going to happen on race day or what I was hoping for on race day is because in case I had to pull one of the people and I only had three, I didn't want anyone to think that we missed our target. And I also wanted to protect these women because we were there in April for an open test, for 2 days. And then we got there in May for the 2 weeks of practice and qualifying in the race. It occurred to me during the open test in April that none of these women, not only had they never been to an IndyCar race,
They
they'd never been to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So the day they arrived and they're walking in, and I had that, I mean, I probably on paper knew this, but then when I'm seeing them walk in, and the beautiful thing about being there for the open test is close to the public. So they were able to have that moment of, because Indianapolis Motor Speedway is one of those places, it's bigger than it looks on TV. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It has energy to it when it's empty. It's just this magical place. And I encourage anyone to go. The Indy 500 is like the Kentucky Derby or the Super Bowl. Even if you're not a horse racing fan or a football fan, if somebody invites you, you go.
You go.
It's that entertaining in and of itself. And even if you just go once, it's one of those things you should see. So our team members were walking in that first day, and it occurred to me, oh gosh, they've never been here before. And they're walking in as part of a team. Like, how overwhelming or daunting could that maybe be for them? So I wanted to be very protective and be a bit of a mama bear and keep them in as much of a bubble as I could as they then went through the following days. So as we got there in May and we had the practice days, now it's open to the public. So every day the crowd gets bigger and bigger
Right.
and bigger.
And they're in a
And so
fishbowl.
they're in a fishbowl. And of any team on the grid, we were definitely getting a lot of attention, and not necessarily good attention. A lot of it was just curiosity, right? Are we going to be a complete failure? So here it was on race morning, and I made the call that morning. Okay, four are going over the wall.
4 out of the 7.
Four out of the seven, so three men, four women. And then the other two that had trained up were behind the wall. And the first pit stop happens, and they got faster and faster and faster. And I knew what number they could hit time-wise.
And by
Like,
the way, you said 60, 40, 20, and it's not like car stops in the same spot every time.
no,
Sometimes it runs 6
right.
to 12 inches long or short, and
Yes.
that's a
You're
variable.
shifting, right, so that eats up, that could eat up half a second,
Right,
right?
exactly.
And again, the danger, and I mean, Simone is really good, but sometimes she's coming in and there's another there's all these
Right. There's
variables,
there's so
and
much
you can't
live
train for
that's
all the
going on.
variables. That what you can hope is that you pick the right people that have their wits about them. And in fact, that morning we kind of gave them a pep talk and just said, keep looking up pit lane and be careful where you're basically your hands and your attention go where your eyes go. So we actually that morning, the race morning, Lynn St. James, who's a famous racing driver, came and talked to
Yeah.
our crew and
She's a
said,
legend.
right? She said, watch your eyes. And it was really great advice for her to bestow on them. So the race starts, and I'm on the pit stand, my timing stand. I got my headset on, and when you see us all with the radios, especially for my role, I'm hearing a few different feeds. I'm hearing our spotter talking to our driver. I'm hearing the engineering. There's a few different chains of dialogue going on.
Right.
It's not peaceful, and it's noise canceling, so I don't really hear the crowd. So however many laps in, Simona comes in for her pit stop, and comes in, pit stop happens, and she
This
tears
is the
out of pit
moment.
lane.
This
This is
is
the
the
moment.
moment.
This is the moment. And I was watching very closely, but this is what we do, right? So in that moment, I will admit I wasn't thinking about anything special. I was doing my job, which I know everyone else was too. So I'm just a team owner, or I've been team managers before. I'm just watching a pit stop. I've done it a million times. I'm just doing it right then. She tears out of pit lane, and I start to hear this noise, and I lifted my headset off my ears, and I hear that there's this roar of the crowd.
Wow.
And I realized in that moment that they were cheering for the pit stop. And what I didn't know, and I learned later, is that we were on the big screens all around the stadium,
Ah,
around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So everyone saw it, and it was coming in for that first pit stop. And it was that make or break moment. This is going to
mm,
be success or abject failure. And I will admit, there's that moment when, these moments of making sure all four wheel nuts are tight and all of these things, you do have a bit of, everyone's professional, everyone does their job, but you're releasing this woman back into traffic, and she's going to be going 230 miles an hour. And you have to do it right. There's very little room for any error, right? So the crowd cheers, and I realize, oh my gosh, they're cheering for a pit stop, which we all take for granted.
Yeah,
I mean, and a
I'm
pit
getting
stop can make or
chills.
break
It's
your race.
amazing. It's
And I will
amazing.
say our women they were doing sub 5 second pit stops ultimately. So they went from 18
Wow.
seconds down to sub five. And what's cool is you can, like I say, you can pull that broadcast up on demand and see that. And I think what I'm most proud of is it proves that you can teach a team to do amazing things under pressure, under scrutiny. And if you give them the right guidance, if they have the aptitude and interest, if you give them the right tools and the right support, you can really get teams to do amazing things.
Yeah.
And what I think is amazing too is all of it is 100% real. You can't fake that.
Right.
You all saw it. Those are, and in that photo that I have this photo of the pit stop, and in the photo there's actually 11 women working. If you count if you count Simona, you
Sure.
count the
Right.
spotter, the even our team photographer is a woman. So they're all in their role as professional motorsport, people, professionals. And the thing that's amazing, especially, is you see a lot of visible ponytails. So, and
Right.
the pit crew too, they have helmets. And I made a point of making sure that I had their first names on the side of the helmet, because I thought that was something that maybe a young girl watching at home could maybe see her name on someone else's helmet and feel a connection, and realize
Right.
that this is for her, and we're doing this for her.
Really smart. That's really smart. I've heard that story before, but I got goosebumps really authentically, and I've heard it enough where I want our listeners to hear it, because from the start to the finish, what was the first time of the first pit? It was under 6.2.
Yeah, 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 for sure. I don't know the exact time, but it was
Okay.
probably
And
just
and
shy,
they were
just
and
over
they were hitting
5.
them under 5 there after
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
We had
amazing, from the start to the finish. I'm sorry, just,
no.
I always try to kind of apply this to the working world, business life, but also, our personal lives. There's everything from recruiting, HR, the vision, training and development, a safe place to fail, having your team's safety in every sense of the word. The first name on the helmet is so smart to, for those your words, if there's a young girl who's looking and watching at the race with her family, these are family events that take place in the largest sporting event in the world. And I want to take it from there, Beth. What are your thoughts? And I've talked to you a little bit about this, and plans for the development of bringing women through the cycle, whether it's a driver, whether it's a mechanic, whether it's a
Mhm.
pit, running the pit crew. What are your thoughts on that?
On just recruiting them and getting them
Getting them involved through the junior and up, and having it not just be this, let's
right.
go out and find a group and put them together, but that there's a process by which are becoming available.
Yeah, it's imperative that we identify and cultivate new talent, because one of the results, or the outcomes of our effort last year are two of the women that were on my team are now full time on other IndyCar teams. So wonderful for them to see their progress and their promotion, but bad for me because now I've got to backfill them and find
Right.
and find fresh talent. So
Right.
it's a wonderful problem to have, because it means that it's working. And actually, one of the other women on our team is now full time supporting an engine program in NASCAR in the Cup Series. So one of the things that we're doing to cultivate new talent, Lynn St. James and I actually just last week launched a group called Women in Motorsport North America, which is really an effort to just aggregate information across all different programs, all different series, all different disciplines, from the amateur ranks all the way through professional, including people that are working for race tracks or that are race promoters, people that are in media, public relations. Again, then of course on the competition side, drivers, mechanics, crew, etc. The easiest way for people to get started is, if they want to be a driver, you start karting. If you want to be a mechanic or engineer, it's to work for an amateur team. And it's literally the local track near you, and turning up and getting to know people, and
Right.
asking for
Sweep
a
the
job.
garage if you have to,
Sweep
but
the
get in there.
garage. I was absolutely a gopher. I was a gopher for a sports car team, probably for a couple of seasons. I still had a full-time job, but I just loved it so much. Usually you get paid with a hotel room and a pass to the race, right? If it's a race that's away from home, right? So you're just excited to be part of the hotel block, and then you've got your credential around your neck, and you could be doing anything from running to go get lunch for people. And it's that willingness to pitch in, and everyone will tell you that. I think so many people have that shared story, and it's that attitude that, I mean, you can, it's like the people that say that they started in the mailroom. It's the same thing in racing. It's starting with pushing a broom, or, running to do the unglamorous things like return the golf cart. But it all
Right.
matters because,
Yeah.
race teams are small little businesses. And, my intention, why I started my team, was I was a motorsport director. I was the motorsport director for Fiat Chrysler. And I saw how large companies used motorsport and could use motorsport, maybe in some
Mm,
ways that they could leverage it even more than they were. And the reason I connected the dots to do this and start my team is I also saw how car companies and suppliers, and you could say this across many industries, were lamenting the shortage of engineering talent and technical talent, and that there was going to be a critical, almost a crisis across different industries, because there weren't enough people studying mechanical, electrical, chemical, materials engineering, industrial engineering, all of those different categories. So working for one of the big 3, I saw that acutely, but I also
yeah.
knew how magical motorsport can be. And industry, what, normal, typical thing, if you're, a large company, you're recruiting from, recent college grads, and colleges are recruiting from high schools. But the reality is, if we want to fill that pipeline, we have to go higher funnel. And the higher part of the funnel is trying to capture the imagination of kids. You can affect a kid's trajectory of what they want to be when they grow up between the ages of 10 and 12. So not everybody's going to grow up and be a race engineer or a racing driver. But if it got you to pay attention in school and you grow up and you go work for Boeing, I still count that as a win.
That's a big win, big time.
Yep.
You know, I want to finish off with, it's such a rich conversation, but I want to finish off on a little bit lighthearted. Any era, any, whether it's open wheel, NASCAR, whatever, what driver would you have loved to have seen in person or worked with?
Oh my gosh. Jim Clark, Scotsman, who won the Indy 500 in 1968. In fact, his car that won that race is at the Henry Ford Museum near me, and I have a picture of it. Like, I'm that geeky that I have a picture of it on my desk. The two, it's a tie. It would be Jim Clark or Ayrton Senna. Ayrton Senna, who was, probably the best Formula One driver of all time.
Yeah,
I was alive to see Ayrton Senna race on television, never in person. So
yeah,
to meet him, it's funny. Years ago, I was putting together a racing program, and his nephew was being considered for my team. And I remember somebody giving me his phone number, and like when it was in my phone, that moment of like, it's like these how many degrees of
right.
separation. But I'd
Yeah,
say, Ayrton Senna or Jim Clark, which are always the obvious ones that most racing people say, but we say those two for a reason.
yeah.
Yeah. And I've been lucky
And
enough. I will say in the I was a fan. I still consider myself a fan, and I will never lose that, I hope. I'm still a geek that loves cars and reads car magazines and all of those things. And I go to vintage to see vintage cars. And I've had that passion, and it's like it's my life, right? So it could be boring, but I live this, and it's, hopefully everyone can see that it's authentic, that I am that
yeah,
geek.
they do. And
But
it go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, I still consider myself a fan, and it still is amazing to me how many racing people I now can count as friends, who I used to watch on television.
Yeah,
And I still have those moments, just even to be having partnered with Roger Penske, and all these other racing drivers, both in the US and Europe, that I'm weirdly, I'll say, adjacent to. Still thrills me, and
yeah.
and I
That's
hope that
really
that never
cool.
goes away.
Well, I think that that's an important wild card, if you will, being the fan that keeps the spark and the magic going. In
Yeah,
addition to the teamwork, the business aspect of it, the competition
right.
aspect of it, being a fan is kind of foundational for you, and
Yeah,
and it comes through for sure. Beth, really great conversation. I think we're going to leave it there. I know for a fact we left some things on the table, so we'd love to have you back at some
right.
point. But just so appreciate your generosity of sharing, behind the curtain, lifting the veil, if you will, of your stories. And I just want to leave it on this point. If we take the pit stop, the pit crew story, I'll call it for now. Maybe we
Mhm.
can come up with a better name. It's a victory.
Mhm.
And People can go to Peacock and watch it on demand. The Simona didn't finish the race. Simona, your team didn't finish the race. I don't want to minimize that, but I think that that is not the headline by any means. In fact, that doesn't even make it into the main
It's funny, I
story.
almost forget that that happened. I had somebody the other day on the phone said, "We really need to finish what we started. I'm so sorry that we didn't finish." I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we retired with 30
Yeah, but
laps." But because so much
maybe
else had been accomplished, right?
right. And for me, it's complete. You got there, which is not the ultimate thing you want to. I think you're in it to win it. But the fact that you're running 3 tracks in 3 markets and have the wherewithal, the resources, the sponsors behind you to be able to do that and put a team together, that's the continuation. It's not
Yeah.
finished.
No.
And I would say this, it's easy to share the victory story, 18 seconds to under 5 on some of the stops. And that's beautiful and that's great story. But the struggles
Mm,
and the waking up at 4:30 and the working moms and the stuff that glares that they had to go through, whether the cynics or the old school men and women that are,
mhm.
what are you doing here? This isn't the place for you. Those are the things that I've heard. I love the phrase, we're stronger than what's holding us back, or we're stronger
Mhm.
than what's in our way.
Mhm.
And I can hear that in your commitment to bringing women into a male dominated sport, but being a successful business person. And it's not just like, hey, we won, or hey, we made this much money, but it's the struggles along the way. And
Yeah.
you have such a core virtue of enthusiasm and a great spirit about it. It just shines through. So thank you again for being with us and sharing those great stories.
Thank you so much, Seth. I really appreciate being here.
If you'd like to learn more about this speaker, visit our website at thekeynotecurators.com. There you'll find dozens of videos of speakers that are a perfect fit for your event. If you'd like to reach out directly, please click on the link below in the description. My name is Seth Dechtman, and you've been watching Curated Insights.